Finance Minister Tito Mboweni is leading a delegation to the United States to make the country's case for greater investment. This drive comes just a week after South Africa secured 363 billion rand in pledges at the investment summit. CEO of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, Leila Fourie, is part of the delegation and joins us now from New York City. Good evening and welcome to The Full View. What is the message that South African business as well as the South African government is sending to investors in New York?
Good evening. The key message that we're sending to investors in New York is that public and private partnership is working well, that there are plans in place to address both the state-owned enterprise issues and also the fiscal deficit problems, and that those plans are going to be put in place swiftly. And what we are seeing is that investors are starting to become agitated to see action, and action sooner rather than later.
What sort of action would you say it is that they're looking for?
They're looking for concrete plans to address the fiscal deficit. They're looking for concrete plans to address the weight that SOEs are placing on the broader economy. And they're looking for sustainable growth opportunities and sustainable actions that are going to point to growth. In effect, they're looking for not only policy certainty, but also a commitment to implementing our very well presented policy and growth initiatives that we've already put out.
And speaking about SOEs, one particular SOE that investors as well as rating agencies have been hammering on about, it is Eskom, and saying that Eskom is the biggest threat to our economic stability. Do you get the sense as well from investors in New York that that is one of their biggest concerns, whether South Africa would be able to provide electricity supply?
It's certainly a key focus for investors, and many of the questions that were posed to Minister Pravin Gordhan were really around how quickly the activities are likely to take place to start to address and turn around the financial situation. And so it's most definitely key on their minds. I've personally engaged with a number of investors who have indicated a very high interest and a high appetite to, in fact, inward invest into SOEs such as Eskom.
Another SOE, SAA, and speaking to a colleague earlier on who was saying that, you know, when you look at SAA, one thing that we should take into consideration is that when it comes to commerce, transport plays a critical role. And here we have SAA, and SAA is struggling.
In fact, an interesting point that Trevor Manuel made at the conference was that currently SAA features and serves the top echelons and the most privileged component of our society. And so I would argue, intriguingly and rather ironically, that we need to start looking at what sort of service delivery we're offering to the man in the street. And so there is a concerted focus by government to start to address the efficiencies both within SAA and all of the other SOEs.
Leila, I'm going to try and put you on the block here. Would you agree that probably what should happen with SAA is private ownership, or rather get an equity partner in?
Look, I suppose it's a difficult question for me personally to answer. I can see pros and cons in both. What I can categorically say is that investors, both locally and abroad, are looking for action, and they're looking for an outcome that will reduce the fiscal weight that our SOEs are placing on government right now. Of all the things for us to be investing our funds in, SAA is probably not going to give us the same return as investment in key infrastructure projects, and particularly in public transport that serves the man in the street.
Yeah. Okay, and then speaking about President Cyril Ramaphosa as well, that he announced last year that he wants to raise about 1.2 trillion rand within the next 5 years. Do you get a sense that the business community is finding Cyril Ramaphosa appealing, that what he's saying sounds appealing, apart from what you've just mentioned now, that they want to see action?
I've been out of the country for 3 years, and since I've come back, I've noticed a remarkable shift in the public-private partnership. When I was at the JSE 3 years ago, we worked very hard to try and encourage that. And I've been enormously impressed by the way in which the private sector is starting to lean in and starting to support the public sector. And I would argue that the success of Ramaphosa's recent conference and the enormous pledges that we saw being committed to is a testament to that. So I'm hopeful that this will continue to grow. Have we done enough? We certainly have an enormous road to travel, and we have a lot of work to do to recapture some of the value that was eroded during the state capture years.
The Financial Mail actually quoting you this week that you saying that you were quite taken aback by the negative psychology that you found when you came back to the country.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, that, because having been overseas and looking at the number of profound problems that many of our developed world countries are working through, whether it's the inertia over the past 3 years created by Brexit, where very few corporates are investing in capital, making capital investments, whether it's the inertia created between Trump and China through the uncertainty around trade wars, or whether it's the complexity in the Middle East. Our problems are by a long margin manageable. We have levers that we can pull, and we have a lot that we could do to address the low growth economy. I'm not for one moment underestimating or trivializing the problems that we're facing, but I do think that the narrative of the country and the mentality with which we approach some of those problems is really critical. As business leaders, we need to unify, and we need to create a positive narrative about the potential for growth in the country.
Leila Fourie, the CEO of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, thank you so much for your time and all the best. Let's hope that you bring back all those billions. Let's go to a quick ad break.